Hi there. Right. I should be live now. Welcome. I haven't been here for at least a couple of weeks, so I'm so glad to be back. Um, it's been quite the journey. So if you're not tired of it yet, I'm going to share with you some of what I've been learning, and only some of it, because I have a whole lot more coming down the pike, as they say. So, if you've been following my saga, I flew to South Carolina last November, a year ago. Holy cow, it's just a year this weekend. So, today is November 12th. I flew, this is the weekend I flew last year. So, it's been exactly 1 year. Holy cow. If anyone told me that this whole thing was going to last over a year, I would have thrown in the towel a long time ago. So I'm glad I didn't know. So I flew to South Carolina for a special workshop on hosting events, which was fabulous. Hi, Jody. Um, Hi, Alexis. Good to see you, ladies. I am better. So let me say the good news is I am better. Um, Not that there's bad news, but it's just taking such a long time. Uh, Hi, Julie. I am live. I'm live and I'm alive. I have to say that it's kind of weird to say it, but there was a very good possibility that I could not have survived this. So let's talk about the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system has multiple functionality. One thing it does, so waste product. So waste product in the body gets triaged into different cleansing mechanisms. The blood carries about 90% of particles that need to be cleaned out of the system. The thing about it going through the venous system is that the particles are small. Larger particles, which tend to be protein waste, goes through the lymphatic system. So, what does that mean exactly? That means that there's as much as a couple of liters of fluid that builds up in the body on a daily basis that then transports through different places in the body. So, one place is what's called the inguinal, inguinal, I call them inguinal. In the groin, there are lymph nodes. There are also lymph nodes here under the armpit called the axilla. And the reason we know of that is because lymphedema can be a complication for many who go through lymph node removal with breast cancer. So there's more understood about that. But there's a vessel in the body in the central system called the thoracic duct. The thoracic duct starts um, in front of the spine at L2. There's a sac, small little sac that collects fluid. It's called the cisterna chyli. And then that fluid transports up the entire thoracic duct, which goes all the way up the central, in front of the central part of the spine, then does a turn in the upper left quadrant up here. Can you see that up here? Does a turn and it goes into a vein called the left subclavian vein. Subclavian is just underneath the clavicle. The clavicle is here. So the left subclavian vein, it goes into the jugular. There's a juncture, goes into your heart and cleans it out. Now, the interesting part about the thoracic duct is it cleans 3/4 of the body. Let me say that again because when I was doing all my research on this, I kept looking for answers and I kept saying, that's bizarre. How can one vessel clean out 3/4 of the body? But that's what it does. The thoracic duct transport cleans out the right and the left extremities up until all of the left part of the body. So, the right leg and the left leg, the pelvic region, the torso region on the left, the smallest part of the right, and the right arm and shoulder, and head and neck are cleaned out by the right. What's it called? It's called the right duct. So it's 25%, which is still important, but it's definitely not the same impact as the thoracic duct. So what the hell happened? I cannot be sure. Nobody knows for sure, but I'm going to tell you my hypothesis. Oh, let's see. Hi, Sherry and Telly. Um, Julie from North Carolina. Marilee. It says from Arizona, but you're usually from the Pacific Northwest. Are you visiting Arizona? Anyway, hi, everyone. So I'm going to go back now to talk about the central lymphatic system, which I am beyond fascinated with. Um, so my hypothesis is, given some of the symptoms that I had. So I arrived home from South Carolina on November 14th, which will be a year ago Tuesday. Very sick. Couldn't breathe. My D-dimer, which is one of the markers for pulmonary problems, and especially the potential for pulmonary embolism, was sky high. They had me in the emergency room before I could say my name from the airport and was admitted to the hospital for tests, and the tests went on and on and on and on and on because I kept saying, I think it's my lymphatic system. And they kept going, and then they would do another test. I had 130 tests. Yes, more than that. That was just the initial emergency room and admission to the hospital and trying to figure out what was going on. And it was a very long road. And by January, I had contacted, there was what's called an interventional radiologist named Dr. Max Itkin from the University of Pennsylvania. The only, let me say this again because you're not going to believe me, the only doctor that does work around the lymphatic duct. because the assumption is that my lymphatic duct was blocked. Hi, Kathy from British Columbia. Good to have you here. And then the thing about it is, I began to remember other times when things were wonky. My system's been wonky for a long time. I've learned to ride with it. I've learned to make adaptations. I mean, I do this for a living, you know? I look for solutions and find ways and find adaptations. And anyway, through this whole journey, it became clear that if I didn't do something, I was didn't look good. The chances were very good that I would um, meet my maker, as they say. So I ended up going to UPenn for an angioplasty, which is a rotor-rooter. They clean out the system. They clean out the juncture. Worked beautifully for 2.5, 3 weeks, and then all the symptoms came back with a vengeance. So it was decided that what I needed was something called a lymphovenous bypass anastomosis. What is that? That is where they cut the lymphatic, um, the thoracic duct, and they sew it together with the veins. So the transport is going directly into the jugular vein. Doesn't that sound kind of interesting? It was. I was fascinated. The fact that it was happening in my body was a little okay. How does this fit? And I mean, there were so many questions. And to say that I was scared, I was. To say that I was overwhelmed, I was. To say that there was something going on that nobody could give me definitive answers to. I think I'm just going to take a breath or two now. Thank God I've had my sense of humor through all of this. So I canceled last week because I was not in good shape. This week I'm much better. So I can see myself getting better. First of all, I am not the kind of person that gives a lot of space for recovery type activities like sleeping, like resting, like getting that I can't do a lot. I'm such a doer. So through this whole thing, I had planned in my calendar 5 days to recover from the surgery, honestly. So, like, in what world did I think that was a reality? 5 days I had scheduled, said recovery from surgery, then moving on. So, surgery was 4 weeks ago, and I am still recovering. I got very sick. My post-surgical um, congestion, I think it was from all the fluid being released in my system. Um, I just was so congested, I could barely breathe. And, the nurse practitioner said, "Well, it sounds like you have a cold." I'm like, No, this isn't like any other cold I've ever had in my entire life." So I sort of rode that out, and I'm 95% better. There's a little bit of it left, but not much. So I have so much I want to say about all of this. So I started by talking about the lymphatic system. I have come to appreciate the lymphatic system in a way that I I I hadn't previously. I knew it was important. I knew it was part of what I needed to understand as lipedema. I was way more focused on it being a fat disorder than a lymphatic disorder. And now I feel this kind of very well, I'm just gonna, I mean, you guys know me enough at this point. I feel very humbled by the complexity of the body and the wisdom of the body and the willingness of my body to answer my questions. Because I keep asking the questions. I'm like, okay, why is it this? Why is it this? Why is it doing this? Why are you doing this? And if I'm willing, you say, how do I get an answer? Well, I go online, I ask some of the questions that I ask my body, I ask Google, I start to do research. You know, I'm a researcher. I start to do research, I start to find linkages and patterns and understanding. I'm going to be doing a pretty comprehensive webinar about this when I'm well enough. I'm not yet, but I will be. And so I found out how integral the lymphatic system is to the digestive process. The lymphatic fluid, part of its mission, part of its goal is to help with lipid metabolism. It digests fat. It helps to digest fat. And I'd been on a keto diet, and keto diet is got a fair amount of fat in it. They told me to get on a low fat diet immediately because the lipid metabolism was problematic. I'm like, oh. So putting the pieces together and um and there's so many other pieces to all of this. It's understanding the role of low carb. And I've been low carb for most of, when did I start? 1986. I think it was 1986, 1987. I went low carb as part of my 12-step Overeaters Anonymous program. I went low carb. Um, Recently, I've added some carbs back in because I'm trying to figure it all out. So I did a whole bunch of experimentation and I'm beginning to think, thank God I went low carb. I can feel differences when I add carbs back in. It's definitely something that changes. Uh, yeah, Julie says she's been waiting for this explanation. It's certainly more than just fat legs, right? Yep, so much more than fat legs. Um, so understanding the role of lipid metabolism, understanding that the purpose of the lymphatic fluids drainage process is to get rid of these waste products, which are toxins. When the system doesn't drain those toxins bury themselves into the tissue. It's what's called congestion. And that congestion is toxic. So the MLD sessions, which are fabulous, release the toxins into the system, which then need to be processed out of the system. So there's this incredible complexity For those of you who've been around, Dr. Perrin has given a couple of talks. I found him through Kelly Bell and his wife Jen and the work that they're doing with Leslin about the central lymphatic system. And he has been really working a lot with long COVID and um, chronic fatigue syndrome and a couple of other, like fibromyalgia. When you look at them all, what they have in common is the toxins aren't getting processed out of the body. And when the toxins stay in the body, creates these symptoms, which is what I think a lot of the central lymphatic stuff that I've been dealing with has been. So I am curious. It's always good for me when I get to that real curiosity because I keep moving. So I am balancing rest, sleep, research, experimentation, and knowing that in the next several months, some answers will fall into place. Dr. Perrin is coming to Boston. Um, we invited him to come, and he's going to be teaching a certification workshop here in February, the first week in February. Um, Hi, Marcia from Texas. Um, so wow, what a ride. I say that whenever I do one of these, I say this because I'm like, holy cow. If anyone had told me, I'm like, wow, what a fascinating journey. Um, okay, Julie has to go to the pool. It's pool time for her. I'm not ready to go back. I'm still post-op, so I'm gonna be going back sometime in the next few weeks, but I'm giving myself a lot of runway time because I find that if I do anything before I'm ready, I get exhausted, like literally. And so I'm in the balancing mode now. Well, thanks. I think to be continued. We'll see what else I learn in the next week or two. And thanks for so much. I've received so many emails and texts and cards and well wishes. It makes such a big difference. Uh, yeah, so the Healing Blossom says, I just read some research being done. And it's really interesting how all of this ties together. It does. It does. Oh, Julie says it's just a nudge. She's going to the pool tomorrow. Well, that's good, Julie. I'm going to be going as soon as I can. So, all right, everyone. Have a good rest of the weekend. If you're watching the replay of this, thank you again for all the support. I can't tell you how important it's been for me, and it will continue. And I love you lots.